This is how I feel. Anyhow, hey there, folks. And today we're going to talk about grumpiness, crankiness, irritability. As some of you know, my father was a very angry, impatient, short tempered man. And so I grew up with him as a counterexample of how to regulate your emotions and behave. The worst parts of my childhood, at least on the family side of things, tended to be when my father would come home from work and take a nap and then get up for supper. And I didn't know this at the time, but both he and my brother have this thing where they have really low blood sugar when they wake up, and that puts them in an absolutely terrible mood. So my father would sit down at the supper table and just lay into either my older sister Anne or my older brother Dave verbally. And he'd attack them and belittle them and try and just basically vent his anger on them and say crazy things like he was going to call the cops and have his own children thrown out of the house, which is not a thing, and things like that. It was very bad, and my mom didn't do a thing about it. She just sat there and cried a little. So that was my example. And that caused me, as a child with a fairly unsophisticated view of the world, to essentially declare war on crankiness, irritability, to say that no matter what, I would never, ever take my bad emotions out on people, especially the people around me whom I supposedly love. And that, obviously, is an excellent thing to swear to. Obviously, we don't want people to be angry and irritable and take it out on the people around them. Society is in general against that kind of thing. But I think I took it too far. I got to the point where I never become cranky. I can't imagine any times in my life when I was cranky when I wasn't also drunk or recovering from being drunk or otherwise in, physical pain. Other than that, I'm a pretty laid back guy. I'm a pretty mellow person. Again, this seems to all be for the good. But somewhere in that process, I just became unable to express anger at all. And that's not good. That means that instead of letting my anger out in healthy ways at healthy intervals, it just builds up inside me. To the point now where I have this vast lake of fire inside me of just raw, concentrated fury, completely incoherent and bestial, really. And I know that if I didn't clamp down on my anger so hard, that wouldn't be there. It would be, I would be a normal person. And that would involve sometimes being in a crappy mood and maybe snapping at somebody or I don't know, screaming at people on an internet forum or something like that. Going nuts on Reddit. Like other people seem to do. Hey, at least I'd be taking it out on strangers. And so I find myself wondering, like, how do you how do you let your anger out at an appropriate level instead of this all or nothing business? Right now, I have my moments, but they're pretty random. I don't really set out to vent my rage, even though I could do it every day, talking to this camera. Nothing really stopping me. Well, I don't know. Maybe people wouldn't want to watch that, but then again, you never know. Maybe I could do it in a really funny way. Anyway, so I've lived with this imbalance for a really long time. I mean, I'm not in touch with my emotions in general, but I am especially not in touch with my anger. What my lying brain will tell me is that if I open the door just a little to that anger, it'll just explode, and I'll be a crazy person. I'll go on some kind of rampage. I'll do something that ends with the word spree. Not good. Probably not shopping either. And that's probably completely wrong. That's what it feels like would happen. But I mean, our brains do have regulatory mechanisms to, make sure that doesn't happen. So, I probably wouldn't go completely insane. I might become real hard to be around for a while, but the thing is, I feel my anger and irritability trying to push their way to the surface sometimes. So I feel like I have a preview of what it would be like if I just didn't regulate myself that way anymore. And I'd be my dad. I'd be angry and irritable and sarcastic and pushy and demanding and real hard to be around, I would think. I mean, I guess some of the time I'd be alright, but then again, my dad was alright some of the time too. So ironically, I could, if I didn't know better, I could have turned out to be like him specifically because I was trying not to be like him. I was shutting down my anger and not able to express it. And that's exactly what he was doing. Again, didn't know it at the time, but he was being treated really crappy at work. And so that's why he was in such a shitty mood when he got home. Anyway, and he couldn't express himself to his bosses in the provincial government. So he came and took it out on us. Isn't that lovely? Anyhow, lost my point, but I guess my point is I feel like I'm trapped somewhere along the journey to learning to express my anger and to tap into my id, my primal, passionate emotions, anger, ambition, lust, inspiration, joy, even. All the really good stuff and the really bad stuff. And getting things out onto, I'm going to say onto the page, into the camera like this, does help me a lot. So thanks. Thanks for being there. You mean everything to me, my audience. Not to get maudlin or anything. Without you, none of this could happen. Guess that's it for me for today, folks. I will talk to you nice people again tomorrow. Bye-bye.